On today's program, we cover two subjects. The first on risk protection tools available from LRPs to futures. We're going to break it down and try to provide some direction on which one is best for your operation, how you can get started, and what to expect from those that are offering these services. And our second subject on fetal programming. It's a buzzword in the industry. Dr. Kelly Sanders is my guest as we drill down on the basics of what it means to us as ranchers. On this episode of the Working Ranch Radio Show. Hi again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Working Ranch Radio Show. Thank you for joining us on our program, as we appreciate all of you joining us. Of course, there's multiple ways you can listen into our program. If you're listening here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM, we appreciate you tuning in right here, as you will find us every Saturday and Sunday at 12 noon Eastern. And I know we have a lot of folks listening on your podcast provider. Thank you for taking the time to download our program. Today's program, by the way, is episode 58. And, one thing we'd appreciate, if you do like the programs or different ones that you've listened to, be sure to comment on that and let us know. Or if you would like me to cover a subject that I have not yet covered or go a little bit further in depth on, don't be afraid to send me an email. My email address is justin.workingranch@gmail.com, and we would love to do what we can to cover the subjects that you all want to listen out there. Now, for myself, I ranch here in northeastern Wyoming, so a lot of people say, well, how do you come up with your subjects or topics that you're going to talk about? And I said, well, a lot of it has to do with what I'm dealing with or what I'm thinking about in my head, or looking ahead for the next couple, 3 months or half a year down the road, and anticipating what are some decisions that we're going to have to be making as ranchers. And I know for a lot of us, here that listen, we have folks listen all over the country, our timings might be a little bit different for folks. I know down in the South, you folks probably, your calving cycle's a little bit different than us folks up here in the North, but nevertheless, some of the subjects we cover are going to be the same. And so with that in mind, that's kind of how I come up with some of my subjects. Like I said, is what am I thinking about, or what am I going to have to dealing with? And so that's kind of how we do that. But anyways, we are glad to have you joining us on our program. Now, a couple weeks ago, I was on a road trip as I went down to Houston, Texas for the 2022 CattleCon Convention, National Cattlemen's Beef Association annual meeting down there in Houston, Texas. And from that meeting down there, I was able to catch up with a couple folks on our topics that we're going to be covering today. Now, if you listened at the very intro, we're going to be talking about risk protection that's out there. And of course, back in the day, a lot of that risk protection had to do with commodity trading and futures and so forth. Well, nowadays, some of the things we're hearing more about is LRPs, or livestock risk protection program, that's out there, that's available for producers to take advantage of. In fact, we ourselves, we've covered that on our program here on the Working Ranch Radio Show. We're going to be talking a little bit more about that, as Craig VanDyke with StoneX Financial will be my guest. We're going to be talking the various types of risk protection that's out there, and how you can kind of sort through that and get started, and also just some of the things to be thinking about as you pick a focus, as you pick somebody that you're going to be working with, and the questions you could be asking them, and how you can go about getting that done to look at risk protection for your cattle herd and your marketing prospects that are out there. Also today, we're going to be talking with Dr. Kelly Sanders with Westway Feeds. We're going to be talking on the subject of fetal programming. And I know a lot of you probably have heard that. Maybe you've sat in on some talks about fetal programming, but Dr. Kelly Sanders we're going to talk about that and try to get it simplified just a little bit, so that we understand it from a basic standpoint of what that means for each of our own respective herds, and how that plays a role in our decision making as we look at our different feeding type programs that are out there, mineral programs and packages, and how that all plays into effect with fetal programming. And really, just as I said before, with Dr. Kelly Sanders, just trying to simplify it as best we can, and understanding it from that perspective. Also, as we regularly do on our program today, the Captain Tim O'Byrne will be by in just a few moments here to share this week's edition of Tim's 2 Cents. Of course, he's the publisher and editor of of Working Ranch Magazine, and they are working on the next edition of Working Ranch Magazine. If you don't have a copy of this, this is chosen number one by America's Ranchers magazine out there. I would encourage you to go to workingranchmag.com. You can go there and you can sign up for your subscription to Working Ranch Magazine. Every edition filled with great articles, great pictures, great stories that are relevant to working ranches all across the country. So don't be afraid to reach out to the website and take a look at that. And as I said, the Captain, Tim O'Byrne, will be by in just a few moments for this week's edition of Tim's 2 Cents. Also, a regular edition at the last part of our program today, meteorologist Don Day will be joining us. Weather's starting to get, I'd like to say heat up, but it's actually the opposite of that. The weather's getting kind of dicey out there across the countryside. Meteorologist Don Day will be joining us to talk about what's in store for the next couple of weeks and also looking into the first part of March. So be sure to stay with us for that. Right now, a thank you to the sponsors of the Working Ranch Radio Show, the American Simmental Association. And a few years ago, there was a survey done that showed the growth in the different breeds of bulls sourced by commercial producers. This was between the years of 2014 and 2020. And did you know that the largest growth in bull breed type during that time? Well, it was bulls with Sim genetics. Heterosis works, which is why with Simmental, it's more per head, period. Find out more at simmental.org. Also, sponsors include the King Ranch Institute of Ranch Management, the American Hereford Association, Come Home to Hereford, and the North American Limousine Foundation. Limousine cattle deliver to your bottom line. And our final sponsor today is Keneally Angus with their spring bull sale coming up on Saturday, March 26th. To find out more, go to their website at keneallyangus.com. Well, right now, let's check in with the Captain, Tim O'Byrne, for this week's edition of Tim's 2 Cents.
Hey, Justin. Hey, everybody out there in Radio Land. It's no secret that I personally know every single possible thing there is to know about beef cattle production. But when I don't know something, the first place I go is my library. And I just went there a minute ago because I realized I didn't know something. And I got into Story's Guide to Raising Beef Cattle by our own prolific writer, Heather Smith Thomas. And I just realized what a darn good book this is. Everybody that's got a beef cow in the backyard needs to have one of these. And you can get it on Amazon, no doubt. Great foreword by Baxter Black. It talks about breeds and genetics, handling and behavior of cattle, issues in buying and selling, general guidelines for raising beef cattle, pasture fencing and facilities. That's a good, that's what I was looking at actually. Feeding cattle, keeping cattle healthy, growing and breeding heifers, care of the pregnant cow, calf health, and many, many more things. So get your copy of Story's Guide to Raising Beef Cattle. Go on Amazon.com. Heather Smith Thomas. Back to you. Maybe you guys will be as smart as I am one of these days. That's my 2 cents.
All right. Thanks, Captain. And how many of you caught that little comment that he added there towards the very end? And the thing was, it almost felt like he said that pretty straight-faced, too. Anyways, Captain was talking about that the foreword there was done by Baxter Black on that book. On the back cover, here's what it says. Baxter writes, whether you're a novice, dude, tenderfoot, or urban cowboy, to completely absorb the extensive contents of this book, they could probably qualify as a graduate teaching assistant at Agriculture A&M. So there you go. Baxter Black has just a profound way of putting things that make a lot of sense, as he has over the years. So, well, stay with us. Coming up next, Craig VanDyke with StoneX Financial joins us. We're going to be talking about risk management when it comes to marketing and protecting our cattle. We'll be back with more on the Working Ranch Radio Show. It's a competitive calf market, and buyers want calves that will perform, period. And a proven solution is Simmental. In fact, data from the Tri-County Steer Carcass Fraternity from 2002 through 2018 on nearly 60,000 head of calves revealed that Simmental sired calves represented the highest carcass-valued sire group over English and other continental breed groups. And the sire group that was the second highest carcass value was Sim Angus sire. So, the proof's right there. For low-risk, high-potential calves with earning potential, be confident that Sim Genetics will give you more per head, period. Stand strong, Simmental. And we welcome you back here to the Working Ranch Radio Show. Justin Mills here with you, and we're glad to have you along on our program today, as both of our subjects today are going to be coming from conversations where I sat down with a couple of these gentlemen at the recent 2022 CattleCon, or NCBA conference, that was held in Houston, Texas. And of course, when you go down to those events, not only are there a lot of policies and issues being talked about down there, but there's also some educational components that you can take part of as well. And so later on in our program here, Dr. Kelly Sanders will be joining me. We're going to be talking about fetal programming, but now we're going to be tuning in to my conversation with Craig VanDyke with StoneX Financial, as we talked on the issue of risk protection. Let's turn now to that conversation. This time of the year in our ranching industry, you got calves on the ground. Folks have already started calving, to folks still maybe a month or 2 or 3 out from calves hitting the ground. But I know when you look at this, we're still a ways off maybe from being actively marketing your calves. But I felt it was important that we maybe look at a subject here today on with our marketing our cattle, that you can start to get your mind wrapped around, hopefully in an effort so that when that time comes, it'll help you in maybe making some decisions. And it really has to do with the issue of risk protection. And I know that in itself, many years ago, you really our only options in a lot of ways were futures and commodity trading. Nowadays, there's a tool out there that we've talked about here on the Working Ranch Radio Show, LRPs, Livestock Risk Protection. And so I really want to get into that just a little bit here, because I know even as myself, sometimes you're not quite sure where to start, and then also, who do you talk to? How do you, what are the kinds of questions you should ask them, and because you don't want to sound dumb, right? So with that in mind, today I'm pleased to have my guest today, Craig VanDyke, who's with StoneX Financial Incorporated. And Craig, thanks for joining us here on the Working Ranch Radio Show. And I want to kind of simplify this here today to help folks maybe move off the mark just a little bit in looking at some available tools that are here through risk protection here in 2022. And Craig, first of all, I think one of the things, as I said just a little bit ago, sometimes folks are just not quite sure where to start.
Yeah, Justin, thanks for having me on. First of all, I really appreciate this and enjoy, getting a chance to come out here and talk with guys and, meet face to face and shake a hand. And I think that's actually maybe the first step as far as risk management goes. Is a lot of the battles that I see guys face is that it's a small hurdle for them to get involved in risk management because they don't know who they're working with, or they don't know the process completely or how the tools work. And at the end of the day, that's probably the start of 90% of the conversations that I have with my current clients and guys that I meet that are interested in discussing risk management. When I give seminars, when I give classes on risk management, oftentimes they're asking for an educational seminar on the market. And by that I mean LRP, puts, calls, futures, how it works, what's the best way to go about it, right? And what I've come to learn is that it's more important to me that, yes, obviously that we eventually get you to learn those things, but the 3 things for me that carry the most value in risk management is discipline, execution, and management. So my job as a broker is to walk you through those steps. I'm your market therapist, let's say. I'm your money therapist as far as how to execute trades and what we want to do. So if I can help guys breach that small first hurdle, and like I said, that's a majority of guys that I work with today, that's how our conversation got started. I know just enough to be dangerous. How many times have you heard that, right? I know just enough to be dangerous. Well, that's why I have a job. Your job is to be ranching. Your job is to be farming. Your job is to stay focused on the core of what you do. My job is to be behind the computer on your team and helping you navigate that risk as markets move along. And especially in this day and age, as volatile as markets are, opportunities sometimes come quick, fast, and in a hurry. So it's my job to be back there as a team member and saying, I know Justin needs, he's planning on marketing some feeders, whatever, October, right? And, I know his break evens, I know his numbers. We've discussed how different strategies work. I know what we're looking for. Boom. Here's the opportunity. Here it comes. Here's what we can do to make sure we're protecting profit, pending your risk tolerance and what type of strategy we're talking about using. I'm calling you up and we're discussing what to do. You're the boss at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, it's your call. You get to say yes, you get to say no. And I think it's healthy at times too. It sounds strange, but it's okay to butt heads. I think that's healthy for the relationship. That way we're challenging our ideas, our strategies in the markets, but then it's my job to rein you in and say, hey, let's be disciplined here. We've set up a plan. Let's execute it. Once we execute that plan, let's manage it, right? So
let's talk about some of the products because we're seeing a little bit more interest in LRPs. We've talked about it on our program as well, and yet there really is a variety of options out there. And as LRPs have come more into an existence, it's kind of helped guys get into some risk management abilities there without some of the big load lots that futures has on there. So let's talk about some of these options because really as we talked about, people just they're not really quite certain. They kind of know about them and just know enough to be dangerous, So let's talk about some of these different options that are available to guys out there and how that's and where it applies and where this option is good here or this type of product is good here versus going maybe this route. Let's talk about some of these.
Perfect. Yeah. And you've got plenty of alternative marketing, tools out there, but it's the core of what I deal in is the LRP, the livestock risk protection now, which the way it's been restructured recently is starting to really become a fantastic tool now for the producer. So LRP, puts, calls, futures, is the main in what I deal in. I would also include, forward contracting or, cash sales, depending what type of product we're talking about. That is a tool, obviously. So to dig deeper into your question here, all of them have different pros and cons, right? If there was a perfect, cover-all within one position, we wouldn't have the others. The LRP has become a fantastic tool because we can get more specific in what you're trying to do, as far as amount of head goes, steer heifer, weight class. We can get a lot more specific on the LRP, which is handy. The beauty of it, too, the premium you paid for that LRP, and we'll call it insurance policy, you don't have to pay that money until the expiration of the contract. So that's different, obviously, than futures or puts and calls. There's an advantage there, right? It keeps your cash flow open. It keeps your borrowing base open. And I say pay that premium. You might be receiving as well, depending where the market's at upon that time. So government subsidized as well. Right, so we can do some positions in LRP that is better than what I could do for you with a put option on the board. So the con with the LRP is you can't manage it, right? Once you have it, and that may not be a bad thing, right? If you're comfortable with where you've set that LRP level, you're protecting profit, set it and forget it, and you're good to go. You don't want to worry about it. The hard part is when you're looking at futures and options, well, we all know this market moves, especially cattle, right? The feeder and cattle market, is one of the more volatile markets that, I deal with, in the ag industry, one of the more volatile markets. So the con there, with LRP is once you set it, you can't manage it. Whereas with futures, puts, calls, as time moves along, work you in a better position, adjust it, pull money out of the market, still keep you protected. That's a 3-hour-long podcast to get in the fine detail. We'll bring it full circle. That's why I have a job to go through those, specific details on the management side of the equation. It's not to say, though, when I say you can't manage LRP, it's not to say that we can't manage around your LRP position with futures, options, puts, calls. There are ways to manage around it, and as volatile as the market is, I'd say there's oftentimes opportunities to be able to work with that. The put call side of the equation, you're paying that premium up front. If you're buying puts, that premium you pay is, that's the maximum amount of money you can lose. I find guys to be a lot less emotional when we're dealing in non-marginable types of positions, right? You know what you paid. Let's say you got your break-even protected. You know where you're staying. Same with LRP. The maximum amount you can lose is what you've agreed to lock in on. It's a non-marginable position. We found it to be very beneficial versus, guys want to trade futures, and that's fine. I trade plenty of marginable positions, guys. If the numbers work and the guys are comfortable with it, they have the risk tolerance, they have the capital to be able to sustain a big move, there's nothing wrong with trading marginable positions. But I do see at times it gets in the way of guy being disciplined, right? You've got a cattle rallies, you're short the board, you've locked in $100 ahead, life is good, and then all of a sudden we rally and you've got to pay margin calls, and you still got the cattle. It is a margins business, I get it. So there's nothing wrong with it, but then all of a sudden you've been burned on the futures, and now you don't stay disciplined, you get out, you never sell again, and the market heads down for the next 8 months, right? So to stay disciplined, that's a lot more difficult, especially as emotional as we can all get. As a broker, my job is to be unbiased, unemotional as possible. A little bit of background too. I come from the small farm, right? We spent, and I discussed this with you earlier, we spent, 95% of our time trying to figure out, how can we get a few extra pounds on these? How can we get 3 more bushel of corn out of this field, right? We spend so much time and effort in being as good of a farmer or rancher as we can, and yet we spend 5% of the time marketing our actual product. And how do you get paid, right? Well, sure, you get paid. Yeah, if you have more bushel per acre, you got, your performance is a lot better. Sure, you get paid still. But if you're not marketing that side, if you're not on the marketing side of the equation, you're potentially leaving a lot of money on the table, So it comes down to working with somebody that somebody that is on your team, somebody that is willing to understand how you want to manage things, what you can afford, what you can't afford to do, how you like to manage your positions, your physical cattle as time goes along. And it's my job to sit here and help you execute properly, keep you out of trouble, right? Sometimes that's not a trade at all, right? Sometimes keeping you out of trouble saves you a lot of money, and we didn't even do a thing. We just talked, right? And that doesn't cost you a dime. Might start charging you for that.
Yeah,
though.
you might.
So
your rates as a therapist might go up.
Right,
though.
yeah, I know. I don't have the degree, but
Yeah.
I feel like after 10 years of doing this, I could probably qualify for a psychology degree at some point.
Yeah. Well, stay with us. When we come back, we're going to continue with more, and that is we're going to address the subject of what do we do when this market is starting to tick up a little bit. We're going to talk about it when we return on the Working Ranch Radio Show. There's assurance in buying bulls from a proven program, and a program that's been proven time and time again is Keneally Angus. So mark your calendar now for Keneally Angus Spring Bull Sale, Saturday, March 26th. That's the fourth Saturday of March, offering 550 head of yearling, 18-month, and coming 2-year-old bulls. Now, these bulls are fully guaranteed with free delivery nationwide, and bulls out of the industry's leading sires with genomic-enhanced EPDs. You can buy in person, leave them a bid, or bid online at Northern Livestock Video. For more information or to request a catalog, go to KeneallyAngus.com. It's Keneally Angus Spring Bull Sale, Saturday, March 26th at 12 noon Mountain at the ranch south of Whitman, Nebraska. Welcome back again here to the Working Ranch Radio Show. Justin Mills here with you, and we appreciate you joining us on our program today. If you're just joining us, we're in the middle of a conversation with Craig VanDyke with StoneX Financial. We're talking about the risk protection tools that are available to producers out there, whether it's futures or LRPs. We're going to continue that conversation as it was recorded when I was down at the 2022 NCBA conference down in Houston, Texas. Let's go back as we continue that conversation with my guest today, Craig VanDyke with StoneX Financial. Craig, we're down here, Cattle Facts giving a report, and they have been talking about the fact that these markets fundamentals are looking as though this cattle market's going to be fairly stronger than it has been the last couple of years and starting to tick up. So in these kind of environments, what are the options we need to be looking at?
So I'm going to go a step behind that first. What I how I like to view things and what I think I found is successful is, yes, I'm watching fundamentals. I'm an analyst as well. We're looking at, we just had the inventory report. I mean, the numbers are clearly looking friendly. It shouldn't be a huge surprise. The futures market has a lot of that built in already. You look at back months today, feeders are 185, back month fats, 140 plus, right? I mean, we're at some historically pretty decent levels. So, when it comes to trying to determine what type of strategy we want to use, like with the LRP, I mean, the first thing I'm kind of thinking is, well, okay, are we bullish or are we bearish right now? And right now, I mean, market leans to the bullish side. We continue to feed the bull with fresh information. That's going to adjust what type of strategy we might want to look at. So with the LRP, right, we're setting that floor. It's an insurance premium. Think of it as an insurance premium. You can protect whatever level, like an insurance policy. If you have $1 million life insurance policy, it's going to cost you a little bit more. If you've got a $10,000 life insurance policy, right, it's going to cost you a little bit less. Do you want to collect on that policy? Well, no, right? Maybe your wife might want to collect on your life insurance policy, but so we're setting a floor to leave our upside open. And if we're
because essentially, if you have to collect on that premium, it means the market was bad.
Exactly.
I mean, so you're right when you say you don't want to collect on it.
Yep. And it sounds strange, right?
Yeah, I know.
Let's buy this and hope we
don't
it
have
goes
to
to
use
zero,
it.
right?
Yeah.
Hope we have to pay that insurance premium. It sounds strange, but at the end of the day, you're likely going to make more money in the cash market if it continues to go up than you are, if we go lower. And that's why you're setting the hedge, right? To if the cash market drops, if prices start to drop, you've got that floor in place to help offset your cash loss. But if we lean that direction, let's say now on the bullish side, I'm looking at strategies like LRP, like put options, like put spreads. I'm looking at different strategies that are leaving your upside open, because you have the other side of the trade. You have the physical product, right? We want that to go higher, okay? But as we've seen in the cattle market, it doesn't take but, a plant fire. Oprah Winfrey says something about beef. All of a sudden things can change in a hurry. So while I might have a bias as where things head, I'm looking at the charts, I'm looking at trends. If those trends are telling me, hey, market's still in a bullish uptrend, we haven't seen any obvious signs from price action or technical formations that say maybe the trend is maybe changing. As to why, I don't know, right? Nobody knows. I'm not here to tell you where the market's going. So with the LRP, to answer that question, we're at historically pretty high levels right now. Definitely a place you want to respect. If rates start running up, economic growth starts to slow, does the consumer have the extra dollar to pay for a luxury item? Beef, right? Beef's your luxury protein, whether we want to believe it or not. It's a more expensive protein than poultry and pork. Granted, they all work together, but those long-term forecasts to me, throw them out the window. Do they matter? Well, sure, okay, yeah, that they're building our bias, and we might adjust our trading strategy around that bias. But stuff changes so fast that I'm more concerned about the short term. I'm more concerned about if we're getting signs that, maybe the market's topping out here. The charts are giving us signs. Funds are big time long. We all of a sudden raise rates and stock market starts to dump. Look at what's happened here at the beginning of January. Stock market's been under heavy pressure. And the correlation to what cattle's been doing during those big down days in the stock market followed right along, right? So a lot of things can change in a hurry that affect the cattle market. It's very sensitive to that. So we're using those strategies, LRP puts, to help guide us around what works for you. And when I'm talking about long-term strategies or whatnot, one of the first things I working with clients, he buys a new load of cattle or whatever it might be, is where's your break-evens? What's your numbers?
Yeah.
Those simple things.
Well, they need to know those.
They need to know.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's going to change. Death loss or cost of gain. I mean, that stuff's going to change as we move along. So to get back to your original question with the LRP and we have a bullish sentiment right now, right? So to me, if we're at an area where you can lock in some pretty good money and we're at historically high prices right now, fine, be bullish, but be disciplined. So let's set that LRP floor out there if we can get it for a fairly reasonable price for what we think. It works for your numbers. Let's set that floor. And let's pray this market rallies another $20 a hundredweight. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I'm not here to tell you what it does. And then we can step in and maybe if we rally $20 a hundredweight, your LRP is not doing much for you anymore, right? So maybe that's a point where, well, all right, we got really good money in these cattle now, even when we take off the expense of the LRP that we're going to have to pay. Maybe we sell futures at, $2 feeders or 160 fats, whatever, right? Maybe we buy some puts on this load of cattle. It's both of our jobs. It's my job also to be cognizant of how much we're spending on managing risk. You can also get yourself caught up in being in and out too much, spending too much money on insurance premiums or options. You can get caught up in a situation where you've spent too much money on trying to manage that risk. So,
Craig, we could, as you said, there's some of these different subjects. We could have a 3-hour podcast on some of them. We don't have, a lot of time to go into everything like that. But as we kind of wrap up here a little bit, you talk about a lot of things, and I know a lot of people there's things you said that kind of sent people's minds probably down a certain road. But to just and I kind of putting you on the spot here a little bit, but give me just kind of quickly 3 points when you're dealing with folks and they're like you said before, they're uncertain, they just, that uncertainty brings a lot of questions to them. 3 things real quick, just that you'd say, here's what you need to do, this and this. What would those 3 things be?
Good question. I would start with this. Let's cover the first hurdle.
Okay.
Call, ask questions, do not be afraid. So that'd be the very first step.
That's good.
Is fine, and I'm not saying it has to be me.
Just don't be afraid to reach out to somebody.
Don't be afraid to reach out. And building that trust is you wouldn't do business with anybody you don't trust. Right?
Yep.
So building that trust to me is the very first step. This next big step is work with that guy and helping, and he or she should be helping you understand the tools. I wouldn't expect you to know them as well as I would, right? That's why I have
correct.
a job.
That's why. Yeah. That's why we're calling you.
Yes, but understanding those tools is important. If I have a client and I think this is the high, I think this is what we should be doing right here, right now. If he doesn't understand what I'm telling him on, the put or the LRP or selling futures, if he doesn't understand that, I won't put that position on no matter how strong I feel he should do it. He needs to understand why we're doing it. Because I don't want to have a conversation 2 months down the road and whatever the market moves and, I get a call of what in the world's going on with our account, right? I want you to know, hey, if we do this position and cattle rally's $10, here's what your positions look like. I want you to understand that thing. So that'd be the second step, is digging deep into it. And the third step would be get your feet wet. Get your feet wet. And I find you roll through those first 2 steps. I'm not saying you got to protect 100% of your inventory. Stair step into it. Get your feet wet so you can really see and feel and understand how things are going, and trust that process. Too many times I see guys get their feet wet and market rallies and that put goes worthless, right? And then they think it's the worst thing in the world. It's not a day-to-day speculative in and out, true hedgers. That's not the way it should be. My job to keep you disciplined, right? I said it 1,000 times. But trust that process, because there's different ways to manage stuff as time moves along. So trust that process in getting your feet wet and staying disciplined and true to it, because the moment you start to get undisciplined, or the moment you're paying margin calls and you're sick of it, you're never going to do futures again, that's the moment you should stay in, because then market's rolling over and you're going to make all that money back on the loads you have. So,
well, and I think back to your getting feet wet, I think LRP plays into that. That's a strength of LRPs, because in the past people couldn't do it. You were talking about pot loads. Well, there's guys out there don't have pot loads, where the LRP has that advantage. But still, the thing is, it doesn't mean maybe you have 40 calves to sell. It doesn't mean you got to do all 40, even if you got in with 10 head just to try it out. But or guys with pot loads that can do it. So the LRP really has an advantage to that. And I hate to talk about one product over the other, but there is an advantage to that.
Excellent point. Yeah, especially for that situation. So
all right. Well, Craig VanDyke with StoneX has been my guest here today on the Working Ranch Radio Show. Thanks for joining us here on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
Really appreciate you having me, Justin.
All right. And again, Craig VanDyke has been my guest today with StoneX Financial out of Chicago, Illinois. And, of course, if you'd like to visit with him, have questions, you want to reach out to him, please feel free to do so. I will put a link in the description that will take you right to his contact information. And I just hope, if anything, as you're searching out maybe some of these opportunities that are out there, tools that are available, that we've given you some ideas or some questions that you can ask either him or your consultant as well about that, and know that you can get started one way or the other in looking at these tools that are available to us here in the cattle industry. We'll stay with us. When we come back, we'll have more on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
Ka-ching! More pounds, more calves, more profit. Studies show Hereford genetics increase net profit by $51 per cow per year. That's $20,000 in additional revenue for a typical 400-cow outfit. And calves sired by Hereford bulls continue to add value through the chain. A documented $30 per head in feedlot profitability. That's real money and real results. Get more ka-ching. Come home to Hereford at hereford.org.
And we welcome you back here to the Working Ranch Radio Show. Justin Mills here, and we'll get into our next subject here in just a few moments, as we're going to be talking with Dr. Kelly Sanders on fetal programming. But first, those that are riding lead on some of these larger ranches today, they know livestock and they know natural resource management. But the exceptionals are those set apart by their business savvy, their ability to communicate and to lead people. Well, the King Ranch Institute for Ranch Management Master's Degree Program, it can provide that leg up to advance your ranching career. Maybe you're a ranch manager, maybe you're a ranch owner, but you want to go to the next level. Well, the curriculum, the internship, management projects, outreach education events, these all will sharpen your management skills and help to expand your professional network. Now, if you'd like to share this experience with over 45 alumni across the country that currently manage over 7 million acres and run and manage over 155,000 head of cattle, well, check out the program from the King Ranch Institute for Ranch Management. If you go to your web browser and type in KRIRM, that stands King Ranch Institute for Ranch Management. If you search that in your web browser, you can go there to find out more information about their master's degree program. Well, let's turn back now towards our subject that we're going to be talking about next. And as I've said before in our program, recently I attended the National Cattlemen's Beef Association's annual convention down in Houston, Texas. Sat down with a couple of gentlemen and talked about a couple different subjects. One of those is up next as I sat down with Dr. Kelly Sanders of Westway Feeds as we talked fetal programming. Let's turn now and listen in on that conversation. Dr. Sanders, as we know, and you and I talked before our program here, that really we can make this our management of our ranches really complicated, and there are a lot of factors to it, so I don't want to be naive to that. But at the same time, how do we simplify some of these subjects that are out there that we need to be looking at from a management standpoint? And as we talked about, fetal programming is something we're hearing more and more about, and we're in a time frame where calves are already on the ground. Folks are still maybe a month or two or so from having calves on the ground. But let's talk about fetal programming and try to get it simplified and what it means and how we apply that, or how do we need to look at that from a management standpoint as a rancher?
Yeah, Justin, I think a lot of times we, at least in the science world, we try to make things a little more complicated and sound maybe way more important sometimes. But fetal programming, or they also call it, some people may actually hear epigenetics or something like that, and that's really just a phenomenon that goes on during pregnancy, when that when that embryo is actually developing, right? And so what happens in that deal is, if nutrition is not correct, whether it's protein, it could be the lack of energy, It might even be some lack of minerals and vitamins. If we don't have a balanced nutrition for that cow to develop that calf, kind of what happens is, even though the genetics are there for certain performance or reproduction or even marbling in the calf, well, if there's a nutritional insult, basically the genetics, how the calf develops genetically, it doesn't change, but the expression of those genes does change. So I always kind of throw a picture up there of some kind of monkey-looking horse walking through the jungle, just to make the impact or the example of saying it's changing. It's still a horse, but it looks like a little bit like a monkey. But ultimately, the genetics are still there. They just don't express themselves the same. And so if you look at kind of the research that's been done, so even though cattle have, say, maybe the genetics to be, choice when they actually are killed or are harvested, then really what happens is, because it changed in the cow, they may only, that group of calves may only, marble and be 60% choice or 50% choice. And it's not that the genetics are not there. They just don't express themselves because they had some type of nutritional insult in that last trimester when that calf was being developed.
Sure. And you touched there on the timing of it. It was that third trimester period is kind of what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, so if you look at how cells are divided and to develop a calf, the muscle cells are rapidly increasing because the calf's getting bigger. The other thing is fat cells are also developing, especially in that last trimester.
Yeah.
And so if we mess up, so to speak, because of the lack of nutrition, then those cells don't develop in the right number. And so that's really what happens. The calf doesn't really express those genetics for marbling because we reduce the number of cells that are developed, in that calf during that time frame, which is really important for that. The other trimesters are really important, the first trimester and the second trimester, because that is, when the cardiovascular systems being developed and some of the other things that are, the base part of that animal's biology. And so if we have some major insult there, then it begs the question, are we affecting the calf's lungs and heart? Does that affect our long-term health? So I don't know that we have those answers today. I think people are digging into that to see, is there something there? And so it's going to be kind of exciting in the near future to see, if there is some fetal programming aspects going on there that we can actually, affect health on, because man, anybody buying cattle today knows we got the best drugs, we got the best vaccines, we're doing a better job with nutrition, but we still have sets of calves that just get really, really sick, and our pull rates are still really high in feed yards and preconditioning yards. So, man, if we could do something on the cow side to affect health, that'd be a pretty big leg up for us.
Yeah. When you talk about these kind of things and the fact of, then we start to look at the timing and what we're putting into those cows at a certain time. And I know one of the elements that I deal with as a commercial guy myself is just, there's a lot of inputs that we can throw at these cattle. And yet at the same time, we want to be efficient. We want to do the best we can and not go overboard, but we definitely don't want to be, as you're saying here in this particular situation with fetal programming, if you don't have that stuff available, you can really pull the ability of them calves to succeed. You can pull that down. So
you bet.
The middle ground for a commercial guy to say, where do we need to be at with this? Because it's just, we can just go so overboard with input costs in our cattle, and I'm more of a low input guy and might cause some deficit in what I'm doing. But where's the middle ground for a commercial guy out there?
I really think we just need to keep it simple, right? I always kind of have in my head kind of a three-legged stool to say if we're going to have a stool that sets up, and that's, say, a cow's nutrition. Yeah. It's protein, it's energy, it's minerals and vitamins, and it's just balancing that out in that cow's diet, right? And so, depending on what part of the country you're in and what time of year, that cow's needs are always changing. They're increasing or decreasing a little bit, and the same thing's going on with grass. And so I just think the better we can understand the grass base that we have, the size of cows, and what we're trying to achieve. If you're a seed stock operator, then the demands and those inputs probably need to be a whole lot higher, to achieve your goals. If you're a commercial operation, you may not try, your goals and performance desires probably are not the same as that seed stock operator. So I think that's another balance you have to look at. So, man, I'd just say let's keep it simple. Let's remember it's a protein, energy, mineral, vitamin, and just let's balance that. You can get with a nutritionist. You can get with, maybe one of your sales folks, because in a lot of places there's good salespeople at different companies that can run rations and understand nutrition really well, that can help, operations kind of have a balanced approach and be more strategic about how they're feeding their cattle, because we still got to make money in this deal, and we can throw lots of dollars that do a lot of different stuff, and it's good stuff, right? Yeah. It's really good stuff, and but it may not pay at the end of the day, and I think that's where we just really have to evaluate, keep it as simple as we can, and go at it at that,
Yeah, you bet. Well, Dr. Sanders, I want to thank you for joining us. I mean, I guess for me, my simple mind, I need to keep it simple. And so I appreciate your comments. I think it does simplify that in a way, and just for us to understand, like you said, the three-legged stool, keep those three things in mind. And I know, the other thing is, don't be afraid to call a nutritionist, to call somebody. I think there's also some, a little bit of skepticism. Well, are they going to try to sell me their product? But at the same time, you got to reach out and try to get some context so somebody can help you with formulating a ration and where are you deficient and what mineral are you deficient in, so that you can do that.
Well, and feed companies and nutritionists, they have a lot of services that can aid, right? I know we, as Westway, we'll go out to your ranch, your operation. We'll analyze forage. We'll pull hay samples. We'll analyze diets and try to guide and direct. Certainly every feed company wants your business, but everybody wants to help you as well, right? Yeah. And so I think you have to consider that.
Well, and I think too, you gotta don't let that make you not do anything. You gotta don't just sit on the sidelines because you're afraid of that.
Because there are so many resources for cattlemen today. In areas, and again, it can be overwhelming when you really dig into it and go, holy cow, there's a lot of them. I just really try to keep it simple and say, when you got to eat an elephant, you just eat that elephant one at a time, one bite at a time. And so start is the most important thing. Call somebody is the most important thing. You're
Absolutely. Dr. Kelly Sanders with Westway Feeds has been my guest here today on the Working Ranch Radio Show. Appreciate you joining us here today.
You bet, Justin. Thank you for your time.
And again, that was my conversation recently held down in Houston, Texas with Dr. Kelly Sanders of Westway Feeds. Well, coming up next, meteorologist Don Day is in. We're going to be talking about the next blast of wintry weather coming across the country. We'll be back when we return on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
If you could do something today that would bring you a profit tomorrow, would you do it? In the cattle business, it's about efficiency. And with Limousine Genetics in your herd, your profit is just one calf crop away. With Limousine or Limplex cattle, it's more pounds naturally to sell at weaning. It's growth and feed efficiency with the added benefit of carcass merit. The other side of the profit coin with Limousine Genetics is the maternal efficiency, docility, and longevity of your cows and bulls. It's as simple as Limousine today, profit tomorrow.
Welcome back to the Working Ranch Radio Show. Justin Mills here as we turn now with a look at our long-term weather, and meteorologist Don Day joining us. And Don, it looks like as we look into the next week in the first part of March that we are going to see some pretty significant cold temperatures across the country, much as you had predicted earlier when we had talked.
Well, it looks like February is going to really want to show itself over the next couple of weeks in terms of the kind of cold it could bring. A year ago for this week is when we had that big cold wave that caused all the problems in Texas and across a large part of the nation. And it looks like we're going to see a pattern developing that's a week later than last year, but one that is going to be quite cold across a lot of North America. And we have, as we have talked in previous programs, how the last, really 6 weeks, the stormy weather's been in the east. It's been part of the Midwest and Great Lakes. Now, those areas are still going to have plenty of winter weather to deal with, especially the Midwest and Corn Belt as we go into the beginning parts of our forecast period. But there's definitely a westward shift now of the weather that's going to be really affecting the Plain States and the Rockies, as well as parts of the far west, including the Great Basin states and the Pacific Northwest, namely with temperature. There is going to be a really large area of cold air that's going to be moving into Canada. That will then expand and grow and head south as we get into next week and maybe re-energized with another wave towards, let's say about a week from now, another push of cold air could come in. So the second half of February is going to bring in some episodes of cold, and certainly folks who have started calving operations, lambing operations, we're getting to that time of year where that starts to ramp up, and there's going to be some weather challenges.
Mm-hmm. Don, last week I was watching a video podcast of yours on YouTube, and one of the things you talked about is how you look back on some of the previous weather years, and while they do not necessarily replicate, they rhyme. And we look back to years like 2011 and 2014, and how you're seeing this year having some replications or rhyming with those previous years. And so can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. We like to go back in time because a lot of time what we'll find is that when we find patterns that we have seen before, we go take a look at those years and see how that might apply as we take a look ahead in the spring and summer. And we're bringing up the years of 2011 and 2014 because those were both La Nina winters and springs. And that's exactly where we're at right now. They also are similar in terms of 2011 came right around a solar minimum. We just came out of our solar minimum a year ago. So there's some things that are similar. And what we have found is looking back at the late winter and spring of 2011, there are similarities to what's happening now. Also, the late winter and spring of 2014 has some similarities. And what we find in both of those years is that the latter half of winter and spring saw an uptick in stormy weather, an uptick in terms of an active pattern that did lead to more productive systems in terms of precipitation. It's one of those good news and bad news situations. If this late winter and spring of 2022 has some similarities with 2011 and 2014. The good news is that's going to bring some needed precipitation to parts of the central and western United States, which is good news, but it's also going to come with some rough weather. And that means some winter storms and those things that you get when you see those patterns start to get more busy.
Mm-hmm. So from your perspective, let's break it down by the region and how you see this developing in the next couple of months.
It's going to be the northern and central areas of the United States that I think are going to get the help first. Okay. We're concerned about the southern plains. So that would be Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, parts of Colorado and Kansas, to where their help is coming, but later. But we're cautiously optimistic that the Pacific Northwest, the central and the northern Rockies, and parts of the northern plains are going to get into a more active spring pattern this year.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us here again on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
Thanks for having me.
And again, that's meteorologist Don Day with a look at our long-term weather. Well, stay with us. When we come back, we're going to put a wrap on this week's episode.
Do you have a young child, grandchild, niece, or nephew that loves the weather and wants to learn more? Day Weather has produced a children's weather journal full of weather facts, fun weather experiments, coloring pages, and pages to record weather observations for every season of the year. The weather journal is for ages 3 to 7 and designed to be fun and educational. The interactive weather projects are fun for the whole family to take part in. For only $10, the Day Weather Journal is a great gift idea for any occasion. Click on our Amazon link to order at dayweather.com.
And before we go, another thank you to my guest today, Craig VanDyke with StoneX Financial, Dr. Kelly Sanders with Westway Feeds. The Working Ranch Radio Show is a production of Working Ranch Magazine. Join us right here every Saturday and Sunday at 12 noon Eastern on Rural Radio Channel 147 or on your podcast provider. I'm your host, Justin Mills, and until next time, keep your chin down and your mind in the middle. So long.